Hey guys, my name's Katrina and today I have here the Prusa i3 MK3 3D printer. We're going to go ahead and unbox and assemble it. This is the first time I've ever done this, so I'm a novice. If you're a novice, then keep watching and we'll get this thing set up. Alright, let's get started. Assembly instructions, we're going to need that. So let's take a look at the first step. It looks like the first thing we have to do is mount some tracks onto this giant metal frame. So this is the Y-axis. Well, I've gone through all these bags. This says we're doing the YZ frame. There's no YZ frame example here, but there is a Y-axis, and it happens to be the only bag with those screws. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to pull those out. Alright, so we should have the pieces that we need. I just got to find 16 of these. Okay, now let's see about putting this thing together. You actually want to have the track on the side with the Prusa label, the long track, and you want to fit it right into this little U here at the bottom. So as you can see, we put the tracks on. It's just 4 screws and these little U's here. So now we have these little short tracks right over here, and they are going to go on the other side on the next 4, which are closest to the frame here. It also says, you know, when you're tightening these up, make sure you do it diagonally. So tighten one, tighten the diagonal one, and then the next 2 from there. So we're just gonna do a little tighten, tighten. Also try to make sure it's on a flat surface. It's kind of hard to do with the Allen key, but they say it's important, so they probably know best. Okay, well that was slow and a little bit tedious. You deserved a gummy bear. And yeah, then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so the next part, it's important that you be on a flat surface. So we need 8 more of the M5 16R screws, and we need these other brackets that came in the Y-axis container. Alright, so we'll start with the short one. We'll put it on the long axis near us, and we want it to be oriented like this, flat on the table. And we're going to take more of these screws, and they don't perfectly line up with the table and the thing. I'm going to put the screws on to start by leaning over the table here, but it very expressly states to tighten these on a flat surface. So we'll get it started this way. So the screws are on, so we do want to tighten these ones up fully before we put the other ones up. Okay, that side's done. So the next step is we do need the remaining 8 Y-axis screws, and we need these kind of cool little metal track doodads. You don't have to drop it. I'm going to insert the tracks like that with the screw top up. I imagine we're going to screw something into that later. Okay, so now that those are in, we can put the top on again, and we actually want this to be a little bit more flush, and we want this raised piece to be facing up. So now I am going to flip this around to face me in order to screw this in. Alright, so we're done. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. We're still in the Y-axis bag. We're still working on this. There's also a little Y-axis screw and nut bit bag in there. We've now gone and pulled out the Y-axis bag from the 3D printed parts, and we have taken out all of the pieces that look like this. They have a little U shape in the top. What we need to do is insert the little square nuts into the tiny little square holes in the top there, and then we're going to put screws through the little holes here to attach it to our main device. So I've shown you a quick example of what that looks like right here, and we'll go ahead and do a couple of them together. We'll take this, put in a square, in a square. Now, if it's not going in, don't force it. Double check that there's no obstructions. And then just take your smallest Allen key and put it in there to try to adjust it. Pull it in, wiggle it around, make sure it's fitting right. Some of them do need a little bit of encouragement. So now we've got them all in. The next step is to line up these screws with these holes on the long side, the long axis here. And what we want to make sure of, if we take a look at the instructions here, you want the track, the U to be facing up. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to grab some of the screws out of there, the M3 screws. They've got kind of a tiny boxy looking head to them. And as far as I can tell, these are all reversible. So let's go ahead and put these on. Okay, so now we've attached these on the long side. The other thing we're going to do while we're on the long side is attach these anti-vibration feet. So to do that, we need to get to the bottom. This will also help prevent scratching up of whatever surface you're working on. So if you can see here, we're just going to kind of wiggle these in here. We got to get the stoppers into the track and then just push them to the end. These are pretty flexible little rubber pieces, so just twisting them seems to do the trick. Now we're going to attach the same tracks to this side, but instead of attaching them here, they are attached to this piece right there. So they're kind of floating but line up with the ones on the other side. Okay, so let's keep going on the y-axis. Everything that's out on the table right now was taken out of one of the few y-axis bags. So the next part is building this little doodad who's going to go in here. He has this little rotator piece in it, and I think some sort of belt's going to go on that the motor's going to spin. Side, we want to put the nut with the rubber facing out. So that's going to go, so one side is circular, one side is hexagonal. You're going to put the nut in the hexagonal side with the blue rubber facing out. Okay, these might fall out a little bit, but we'll deal with it. The next step is going to be to put this in. The bearing housing orientation doesn't matter. So just drop it in there whichever way you like. We want to take the longer, so for this portion we have 3 different screws. The one is the M18 and then 2 M10s. So for this we want the long one, and it's important that we don't all the way because we want this to be able to turn. Okay, so spinning helps get that on a little bit. And now we should need our kind of medium-sized Allen key again. And let's see if we can get this to tighten onto that screw a little. Just taking a flat piece and trying to push the nut in a little bit more. Hold it in once again with my thumb. Try this one more time. Oh, I think it caught. It did. Make sure this can spin. You can really tell when it does catch. It gets a lot stiffer and harder to turn. So that was the trick. I had to put the nut in there. I actually used this piece for the next part to just kind of hammer it in a bit, and then I was able to catch it. And we've got a free rotating bearing, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so if you look at this, you can see that there is a small circle on this one side. You want that circle facing up. So then we're going to take the M10 screws, the little ones, and we're going to screw them in there. Now it notes in the book that you don't want to do this too tight because you need to adjust it later. So I need something kind of long and flat to push on this. We'll try this one more time. Used the little flathead screwdriver that came with it. and I put the nut in, and then I kind of just applied a lot of pressure to try to evenly get it in there. These finally caught, and we've got this little orange bearing attached now. So the next step is getting the motor attached. This is going to drive a belt which is attached to this bearing to help move things along the y-axis. So we're going to start by putting this so this little flat base piece is down, and we're just going to put them in here. And based on my last experience, I am going to try to push those down a little bit. We take the motor. You want to make sure the motor that you have the right one. It says y-axis. And what we're going to do now is we're going to set this so we have the cable facing me, and we're going to put this attached like so. Okay, so that's the next step complete. That's pretty simple. Next, we'll move on to step 22. Okay, so next is step 21. We take this little mount that we just added to the motor, and we're going to put it onto the short side, so the short tracks. So we want this to be facing like this. So the long piece is on the bottom and the mount is right there. So let's see if this is easier than the last one. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay, let's see if that'll grab now. So I had to get those flush pretty much with the plastic mounting in order to get these screws to catch, so FYI. Okay, so next, all that. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on this piece here. All right, so we're gonna take this, we are going to feed it through. All right, I had to wiggle that in place a little bit to get it to go through. And now you can see we've got the two ends through, and we're just gonna twist on. I'm not really able to tighten the nuts much more than this, but they do give a warning to tighten them evenly and stop when you hit the surface. All right, so now we're just gonna rinse and repeat, do the same thing with the other two. There's these nice little slots in here. Okay, so we have 3 of those loosely secured. The next step is to go ahead and tighten those. We want to ensure they're tightened equally to the surface. So, flip this back over. Okay, I'm gonna tighten this one. So we've got the handy needles that this came with. So they do warn that over tightening of the nuts can lead to some deformation. Okay, we're now done step 24, but we're going to move on to step 25, which is the final tightening. Now, I'm going to kind of say when you're doing your first tightening, make them more like this one so you still have adjustment room. I did these two a little bit tight because now it's saying I should be able to still move the bearing. Here we go. So now it's saying go ahead, center these, and tighten them about 90 degrees. You can feel it when it hits the surface. You can really start to feel the tension, so if you're just cognizant of that, you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, that's step 25 complete. In step 26, we'll go ahead and attach this piece to the middle. Okay. So step 26, we're going to attach this piece. Now, the important thing is that one side has these little teeth, one side does not. We want the teeth to face the double-sided bearings. So we're going to face this on like this. We're going to take the 2 screws that we have here, 2 little M10s, and we're going to tighten them fully where the threads are in the Y carriage. So this is a threaded, the piece is threaded, so we don't need any nuts for this one. So we're going to grab the Allen key, go ahead, get this lined up. As always, I'm just kind of going back and forth just to make sure they're evenly tightened so that we don't end up with a non-flush surface. All right, step 26 complete. So now we're moving on to step 27, where we get to play with some of these bad boys. Okay guys, we have made it all the way to step 27. There are a lot of steps. So for this one though, we're gonna wanna make sure that we get the mid-length rods. There's 3 different lengths of rods. We want the ones in the middle. So that's these guys. So we've got the right size rods. So now what we have to do is put those into the bearing. Be careful if you like the surface that you're doing this on, because I just put a big scratch on the table. So keep that in mind. Maybe put something down like some newspapers or a different table. Okay, so now we're gonna feed these through. Excellent. If these don't go, you need to realign the bearings. They also made note that some of these balls there's balls in the bearings and they can pop out. If a couple of those pop out, don't worry. If more than a couple pop out, they actually recommend that you order a new bearing. So be careful. Try to get these as straight as possible. And whew, that was really satisfying. Okay, so we've got those all in there now. That's it for step 27. It's a pretty quick one. We're on step 28, which is mounting the Y carriage. Basically for this, we are going to turn this around because the pictures all show the big side facing me, the extended side. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And we're gonna pop the mount onto that. So we're gonna be careful not to let the rods fall out. And we want to put, yes, so you see the motor here? The motor has, we'll do this. The motor has this kind of nubbin facing in that direction. You want the double bearing to be on the opposite side of the motor, so the back side of the motor. And then we're gonna put these in and just press with our thumbs. You hear that little pop? Whoa. And then do the same. And she goes. All right. That's it for step 28. Step 29 is possibly my favorite step so far. It involves zip ties. We are zip tying the rods to these pieces. Okay, so I'm gonna grab about 4 zip ties approximately, but we're gonna have the kind of triangular side facing down. We're gonna feed it in through the outside and around, so it looks kind of like that. Then we're going to just feed this through. Tighten it up. All right, and then we use the pliers. With those, we are just going to snip the excess, maybe. Oh man, does it say pliers? Sure does. All right, we're gonna try scissors. Just get a pair of scissors. All right, now we're gonna repeat this for all 4 corners. I'm trying to keep the head kind of pushed down and off to the side so it's not interfering with the track. So keep that in mind, that you want that, you want this to be able to free roll. You don't want to be hitting the head. Cool. Okay, so that's step 28. Nope, that's step 29. Now we need to align the smooth rods. All right. It sounds like it wants us to unscrew these and move the plate back and forth. Proper alignment of the smooth rod is crucial. Ensure that all M310 screws on Y holders, which are these, they're pointing to these little screws right here and here. Make sure they're all released so that printed parts are able to move. So these are the printed parts. I assume we don't have to release the motor or anything because that's irrelevant. Then we move to the carriage to the front plate, which is the extended side, and then we tighten all the screws on the front, and then pull it back and tighten all the screws there. So, I don't know why I closed that. I'm not done. And then, yeah, so let's do it. Okay, so now that everything's loosened, I'll go ahead, pull this to my side, and then I'm gonna tighten this side, back up real quick. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I'll let Ryan, the cameraman, tighten that side.
Do you have to swivel it?
Yes, you're correct. Move it to the other side before you do that. All right, that's it for step 30. Now's when the fun motor stuff happens. So now we're assembling the Y motor pulley. We're gonna insert this piece. So there's 2 holes on it, and we want one of those to face up and the other one to face out. So now we've got one of those on the flat piece and it's pushed all the way in. And we don't want to push it all the way against the motor, we want to leave a little bit of a gap. On this little piece, there's actually a built-in screw right there. So one of these 2 needs to be on the flat piece, and then we just need to grab one of our handy dandies and tighten it on. We need to leave a small gap. We don't need to fully tighten it at this point because we're going to have some adjustments, but just make it so it's not freely turning. Step 32, Y-axis, assembling the belt part uno. That is like this, so that we can see its underside. Whoa! Now we need to find the cable. So now we've got this belt. So they say the right side, but what you really need is you need these slots to be facing upwards. So we're going to take this belt and we are going to put it into the uppermost slot right here. We're just going to slide that in there. It's grooved so it fits perfectly and can't pull out. Little preview, I think you can imagine where this is going. And then we're going to feed this on through right there. Okay, that's step 32 right there. Actually, attaching to here is step 32. Step 33 has us feeding this through completely. So basically the next is all about setting up the belt and aligning everything so it's not jumping off the motor and you know, you can move freely on the Y-axis. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring this piece up through this V here. So you want it to go over this plate, but under the motor belt, obviously. We're not putting it into the second slot. That's very key. We're going underneath. Then we're gonna bring it over to the motor and we're gonna attach it from the underside. You see how the motor has these little grooves? Well, we want this to sit in the groove. So if you're not sitting in the grooves, you've done it wrong. Okay? Then once we've done that, we're gonna flip this back over. Okay? So now we've got this. We wanna make sure it's semi-tight. And then we're gonna bring it back. And we see that there? That should look like. And then we're gonna go back under the belt. I'm gonna flip it back over. Back through the V here. And we're gonna slide this into here. We wanna make sure it's tensioned, but we don't wanna break anything. That's tight enough. But we don't want, or we don't have to have, this doesn't have to go all the way to the end. It just has to be in there. So now we need to do a few things. This is probably too much given the belt. I'm probably gonna figure out how to tighten that out. But let's stand it up. And let's see if we can pull out some of that give by tightening this up. So in the end, we wanna be able to hold this motor and turn this and not have the belt jump, which seems to be occurring. It seems to be fine. So we're gonna put this up and we're gonna see if we want these to be parallel. So let's have a look. Honestly, they seem pretty parallel. Let's take a look from over here or from the other side. See, these actually look pretty good right now. This thing's sliding. We're not going to need jumping of the track. So what you can do now is you can basically just adjust this. We want to tighten down these screws once we have this. So if this wasn't parallel, then you probably need to, let me turn this so y'all can see. If this wasn't parallel, then you can adjust this piece in and out to try to make this parallel, but we're doing pretty good, right? So you can unscrew the screw, pull this out, or push it in, whatever you need to do. We're gonna just tighten it because so far I feel like it's doing pretty good. So let's tighten this up. But there we go. Okay, now the last piece of this puzzle is right here. We want to tighten these. So you can loosen these or tighten these. You know, like if you had it too tight, but I think the goal is that this not have give like this right there. And this will help get rid of some of that give in the belt as well. Okay, so this is freely sliding. We seem to be parallel. We're not jumping the track here. That's tight, we're parallel, this is tight. All of these got tightened back up. We've got a sliding Y track. I think we're in good shape. Let's move on to the X-axis.